Good evening and buenas tardes everyone, Juan, the bird of resilience, and I will now talk about Europe and its problems. There are three problems at the moment. The first is extreme heat, which wipes everything out, the economy, the plants and all of us. Second, the fires result directly from high temperatures. And third, it's the specialists of the third kind, top-class professionals who are gradually coming to Spain and other countries from abroad. Among them are a huge number of highly qualified specialists, and that's what we'll talk about today. Subscribe to the channel so you don't forget, and if you haven't subscribed yet, that's surprising. Well, let's get started. Look, millions of people in Europe are experiencing a new wave of extreme heat, as we're being told. A series of heat waves, drought and wildfires. The summer now ending in Europe has been extremely hot and difficult. I should mention that in many places summer isn't leaving just yet. In southern France, in Spain and also in the south and center, summer will last for another month and a half, so the heat will continue. Naturally, Portugal, Italy and some other countries as well. On Thursday, millions of Europeans told us that they were suffering from a new wave of extreme heat. In a number of countries with a combined population of about 135 million people, the air temperature rose to 35 degrees Celsius and above. And I'll tell you, it was even higher, like in France, 42 degrees Celsius, and in Spain and some regions as well. The UK recorded the hottest day of the year. I would say it's like being in hell. And Europe is now the fastest warming continent. Probably Eurasia, not Europe, but let's leave that to the conscience of the journalists. The countries were poorly prepared for this heat, even though scientists have said before and are still saying now that all of this will only continue and get worse. The authorities of some countries, cities and towns are just sitting on their hands and thinking, damn, what is this, summer, heat? It's hot in the summer. How can that be? No way. It seemed like there were just snowfalls. It seemed like by May we had just learned how to deal with them. And now suddenly it's already hot. Yeah, how is this possible, no? Let's wait a bit more. Let's prepare a bit more. And we are told that abnormal heat and drought, besides being inconvenient for officials, are also causing forest fires. This has led to the deaths of thousands of people, plus the fact that the economy is suffering greatly. And according to the analysis by FPI, based on forecast from the German Meteorological Service, about 340 million people have faced this very problem. And Europe is literally suffocating from the heat. By the way, if you hear some background noise during my video, it's not ringing in your ears and it's not the microphone malfunctioning, it's my fan running because it's hot, really hot. And I have to use whatever means are at hand, so please don't hold it against me. And now, in the French town of Chaudomillon, the thermometer has risen to 42.5 degrees Celsius. Basically, if you put a frying pan out in the sun, you could cook something on it. In Paris, the air has warmed up to 38 degrees. In Italy, a new heat wave is expected to affect 29 million people, according to forecasts. The Iberian Peninsula is also suffering. In parts of the Pyrenees, temperatures have hit 37 degrees. And in the United Kingdom, Britain is starting to feel more like Pakistan, with temperatures of 36 degrees Celsius. Naturally, here we have both heat and agriculture suffering, as well as the economy, plus there are fires. What do we know about the fires? Satellite images show how Europe is changing color under the impact of the heat. Here you can clearly see that in fact there is nothing good about it. Even the grounds of the Palace of Versailles stand out in the satellite image as an oasis. And around it you see everything is dry, yellow, lifeless. On the Danube, the second longest river in Europe, the water level in some areas has dropped to its lowest point in the last 30 years. In Budapest, that's Hungary, the water level in the Danube can reach 8 meters. But now, in some places, it's less than 20 centimeters. Not in the center, but still, in the rivers. The river, which was once an important transport artery, is now turning into something like a brook that you can just walk across like this on foot. And this cyclist calmly crosses, and there is nothing wrong with that. He wades across the Danube. The low water level has also exposed all sorts of treasures that people are now searching for. But we are interested in the economic problems, both direct and indirect. In Hungary and Romania they say there's no cooling water for the nuclear reactors. Let's talk about energy now. Things aren't going well there either. There's also a lot that needs to be fixed. And on top of everything, the heat in the Alps is speeding up the melting of ice. And after a relatively warm winter, the snow cover on the glaciers was lower than usual. And if this continues, the mass of the glaciers, as I mentioned before, will not recover. Accordingly, there will be less and less of them. And this is already happening. For example, the summit of the Rhone Glacier in Switzerland has retreated by 50 meters. Compared to last year. And as of today, during this heat wave in Europe, unfortunately, 16,000 more people have died than usual. And most of them are in France, Belgium and Germany. People there just aren't used to it. If in Spain, Italy, Portugal and France people more or less understand what to do in the heat, then in countries where there hasn't been any, well, a person goes outside, feels dizzy, thinks, well, it's okay, it'll pass. But no, it won't pass. Here you need to use all those methods that were taught back in school textbooks. In biology, I think they used to draw diagrams of heat stroke and sunstroke. How should you deal with this? Not everyone still knows that heat stroke won't just go away on its own. Of course, you can just wait it out, but that's risky. But this heat leads to fires. They are still happening, and a lot of animals are dying. Hundreds of thousands of hectares of forests are at risk of disappearing, plus there's the smoke and everything else. Overall, Europe's ecology and economy aren't doing well. The president of the European Commission, the wonderful Ursula von der Leyen, stated on Saturday afternoon that Europe is in a heightened fire safety mode. But just a wonderful person, Captain Obvious, Admiral of course, all in one. Juan and I are puzzled as to why she still hasn't been made some kind of chief of the whole world, supreme ruler, general, field marshal, major, admiral or something like that. We wondered. In France, authorities said 100 residents were evacuated again Saturday from the outskirts of Lugnon in the Lens department. But in reality, many more people are being evacuated from various different towns. And 550 firefighters are currently involved in fighting the spread of the fire. And it all looks like an apocalypse. If you've seen the movie Mad Max, that's exactly what it looks like. There's a desert here, cars, and all that's left is to add fights for oil. Although actually, those are already happening. Not in Europe though, but still. In the German city of Rief, they are evacuating 1,800 residents. And it's believed that this is the largest forest fire ever in history here, because there's plenty to be shocked by. And in Germany, plus in Spain, in the Aragon region, the fire continues to rage. 1,000 people have been evacuated from there. 15,000 hectares of forest have been destroyed. It's just insane. Firefighters somehow managed to stop the fire from spreading to populated areas. But if this continues, again, nothing good awaits anyone. The situation in Eastern Europe is no less difficult. For example, in Croatia, rescue services are fighting a forest fire on the island of Dugi Otok. There are 100 firefighters involved here. On top of that, there's a problem in Serbia. And once again, Ursula von der Leyen commented saying not to go into the fire because it's hot. Otherwise, it's like in that joke. A bear was walking through the forest, saw a parked car on fire, he got into the car and burned up. Well, that's about how it turns out. As for energy resources in Europe, suddenly, due to the heat, the economy and some other factors, energy prices are rising. Europe is facing double pressure, we're told, from climate change and the risk of rising energy prices. The fact is that countries spend tens of billions of euros every year on adapting to extreme weather conditions. And at the same time, there are problems with gas supplies. I told you about this in another video. I probably show a link to it somewhere here, if I don't forget, right here. The link will be right here. By the way, make sure to subscribe to the Telegram channel as well. Point your phone or smartphone camera at it and you'll get where you need to go. Or for those watching me from a mobile device, there's a link in the video description. And you'll immediately get straight to the very valuable Telegram channel as well. Now I'll show you one of the videos demonstrating the problem some Spaniards have. So here it is. The European Commission has stated that EU member states need to invest about 70 billion euros annually until 2050 to adapt to climate change. All this increases the pressure on already overloaded state budgets. Here Juan and I are wondering, where exactly is all that money supposed to go? Is it really going to Ukraine to arm that country? And probably yes. Plus, on top of that, for purchases as well. For purchases. Cheap Russian energy supplies that Europe turned down. So again, Ursula von der Leyen, whom we've already mentioned, decided to send 850 billion euros to the US to purchase liquefied natural gas, LNG, and oil. And now the US has said, sorry, but we need that ourselves. You are paying, and that's great, but for now we are holding back supplies because we need the oil ourselves. And the US was tapping into its national reserves. So there's a huge problem here. The impact of the climate, all that in Paris there's heat again, and all of this leads to energy loss. There's not enough energy now, but the residents can't help themselves. If you're hot, you use modern ways to cope. For example, I use a fan and an air conditioner, like everyone else. Europe is also preparing for the risk of rising energy prices in the winter. According to data from one of the organizations, current gas storage levels are only at 59% of capacity, which is significantly lower than the average for the same period in previous years. Summer is a crucial period for Europe in terms of accumulating natural gas reserves. But now things have turned out a bit differently. The fact is, gas has become more expensive. Last year, it was believed that everything would get cheaper. As usual, by summer, energy prices miraculously drop a bit. But this time they went up, because the talented Trump, talented in everything. In addition to promising to get things done, he did much more. Instead of ending wars, let's say, he supports them. Whether directly or not is another question. But for example, the same war with Iran affects the whole world, even though it seems like only Israel and the US are involved. But now other countries are also tied to all of this, and very strongly. So again, finances in many countries are in a bad state. What's next? Leading countries suddenly want to return to Europe, to start negotiations with Russia again, precisely because of those oil products, gas and everything else. The New York Times found several officials in Europe who, on condition of anonymity, stated that the United Kingdom, France and Germany are preparing their own format for negotiations with Russia. This is reportedly due to concerns that President Trump will exclude Europeans from talks with Russia. That's wonderful. Germany and France are key players as the UK government remains uncertain about its stance. This is also quite strange because if there are dangers, it plays a decisive role in all of this, since the UK government is still not confident in its position. Some problems? Well, first you need to decide whether you need to be involved in this or not, and then make a decision. But apparently they want to have it both ways. Or maybe even more at the same time, so that's why things turn out the way they do. And here it is said that if European countries could agree on a common negotiating position and achieve independent, real negotiations with Russia, it could support Ukraine. But you see, again we are talking about Europe, the New York Times, and suddenly Ukraine is at the center again. No need to solve your own problems in Europe, like fires, the economy, or your citizens' well-being. Let's keep funding a war that's already lasted longer than the Great Patriotic War. Why not? Maybe another 10 years or even 20. Then, in about 50 years, a new generation will appear, worshipping anyone they can, learning modern history from textbooks painted on parchment. Oh, 100-year war, wonderful. So, regarding the US, we are being told that if suddenly America is not involved in the Ukrainian issue, then the European countries will get involved. But also, air attacks are already happening here. We are not interested in that, because we are talking about world peace here. And we wanted to talk about signing a peace agreement with Europe, or at least an energy agreement. But instead they started telling us about Ukraine. So we're skipping this part. Now let's see what's happening with Spain. I live in Spain, so I tell you that Spain is extending the operation of one of its main nuclear power plants. The Spanish authorities state that extending the operation of Almaraz does not pose any risks. It may be possible to abandon nuclear energy by 2035. Probably the experience of Germany, which gave up nuclear energy and recently, by the Germans themselves, dismantled the last remaining nuclear power plant, and a rather large one at that, doesn't teach people anything. These very green technologies are great, but let me remind you that in Europe there are about 10,000 wind turbines made from composite materials, and no one knows how or where to dispose of them. Nobody thought about that. And suddenly there's a problem of additional cost and environmental impact, which is far from positive. That's why Juan and I continue to be puzzled. Juan's sombrero is shrinking, getting smaller, just like the global economy itself. 2 reactors are scheduled to be shut down by October 2028, and the nuclear sector itself provides 20% of Spain's electricity. By the way, after the cable was damaged there last year, let me remind you, there was a blackout for a couple of days in Spain, Portugal and some parts of France. Apparently, they want to do something like that again. Let's make things even darker, let's keep refusing. On the other hand, in Spain, you can actually use green resources. There's a lot of sun here, and you can literally make this solar cell out of almost nothing and put it to work. But in other countries that depend more on the climate and weather conditions, that's where a big question arises. And finally, here's the last point. The thing is, this is where Europe starts to have territorial problems, especially in Spain. It borders Morocco in its African exclaves. The exclaves are Ceuta and Melilla. And suddenly Morocco is already saying, you know, this is our former territory, let's somehow resolve this issue. In Spain, they've decided not to escalate for now. They said, let's not escalate. But it seems like tensions are rising. So in Morocco, more than 100 migrants were detained at the border with Ceuta. That's the very same Spanish exclave. Moroccan police. Look at how many valuable specialists there are. Here we have geologists and teachers. I see one of the well-known nuclear physicists. There he is. He even has a chain reaction depicted on the front of his t-shirt. And in the back, I think I see specialists in chemistry, physics and biology. Well, here they come. Among those detained, only 2 are Moroccan nationals. The rest are citizens of countries south of the Sahara. That is, with extensive education, work experience, hard skills, soft skills and so on. Everything necessary. There are currently 500 police officers and the army in Ceuta. I showed this earlier. About 70,000 people wanted to get into this beautiful territory. Now let's take a look at my Telegram channel. Again, we'll show it here. About those very... Where is it? Monsieur Macron went on vacation to Spain. You can see this was while there was a fire there. The economy, well, nobody needs that, but Monsieur Macron is out riding a motorcycle. But specialists with high qualifications, with a lot of work experience, are the ones running, trying to get to Spain. These are all wonderful people, highly valuable specialists. Look at the physical skills they possess, and yet they are trying to get to the employment office. They say that they want to get there and start working in a new country as soon as possible, so they can contribute to the economy of this country to study and make new discoveries, to study and analyze natural phenomena, to extract oil, to extract gas, to treat people. Look how many of them there are, and they all running. Over there I see several doctors, neurobiologists and neurosurgeons running too. There's a molecular chemistry specialist, he's into colloidal analytical chemistry. The mathematician is the one in the hoodie. He's just covering his eyes to concentrate on thinking about Fermat's theorem. Probably, I don't even know for sure, but anyway, that's what's going on. In Europe. Write what you think about this. Juan and I are saying goodbye to you. We are not saying farewell, just see you later. Thank you for...